Good morning. Our hand today is going to be pocket eights. This is a little different because it is short-handed. We're four-handed now, and I thought, let's go through it. Let's figure out what player is going to have, how best to play this. We could assume that everyone folds, so maybe it's a full table, but I think the dynamics are a little different because this player is playing 53-25. I'm not sure if he typically plays this, because I only have 50-some hands. And it's possible that, this has all been like shorthanded with him. I don't know. But we do see that the button's going to be playing 86% of his hands with a limp first in 50% from the button. And he does limp quite a bit, but he's going to be at a very wide range. So we do have a post. And that villain folded. So then the button raised, and he raised it 2 big blinds. This is 53.8%. He could easily go up to, could be almost 100%, but he could easily be something like this, where it's like 100, almost all suited cards, a lot of these offsuit cards. I mean, it's going to be a super wide range. And it gets to me, and the problem that I see is that we're going to be out of position against a player who seems to be somewhat aggressive. His 3-bet stats fairly high. 17%, but that's 3 out of 18. I expect him to be on the flop. On the flop, he's betting a lot. C-betting a lot, donking, 1 out of 4. Definitely floating, a float bet. So where I check and I check out of position, he would bet in position. He bets in a limp pot a lot. Or is that raise? He hasn't really raised C-bet, but I'm gonna bet he calls a C-bet quite a bit. At 33, which isn't bad. Calls a regular bet about 50% of the time. So just being out of position is going to be somewhat difficult to play, difficult to know what he has. However, he's going to have a very wide range of hands that, a lot of them are just going to completely whiff. And even if they connect, they're not going to be really strong connects. They're going to be weak connects. So here, versus this player, we look at my range, and this is a 3-better call range versus a button. And this assumes like a normal like button raising range. So if we just kind of go, button first in, you can see all of these. So you could ignore the color because those are color coded for like 3-betting, 3-better call. Just if it's colored, then this is the recommended. Let's look at this. This is the recommended race first in stat. So you can see, for like GTO, this would be a GTO type hand range. This is 57.5%. That's a very, very wide range. It's a very wide range. He could easily be playing this, and if he's playing this, then we're playing something like this. So 8s are at probably the very top end of our 3-bet or call range. So we're kind of on, I would say we're on the cusp. We could 3-bet or we could call. I think 2s and 3s and 4s might do a little bit better as a call, just a call, and then play it post flop. So you give him the initiative on the flop, and then you make a play for it. I think that's how it would work. Maybe, raising some of the big cards. So if you flop, one pair, it's going to be a high 1 pair. I believe I chose a call. This is a 2 big blind bet. So I kind of think I'm leaning more towards weaker ranges, just because he raised to that amount. I would like to think he's raising, larger amounts, but. And I don't, again, 59 hands, I don't have a huge number of notes on him. Would it be okay to 3-bet? Yeah, definitely. I guess, against a player like this, since we're out of position, I think a better strategy to combat this very open and wide range is just to go ahead and 3-bet here. Be aggressive. Because if you just call, you're playing into their hands. They're already very wide. They're already very aggressive. If you call, you're going to be challenged with more bets on the flop and on the turn, and it's going to put us in some uncomfortable situations. But if we raise, hey, we're going to pick up that pot potentially pick up the pot without seeing a flop. What was I doing here? Brand new. sat down at the table. This is, the fifth hand at the table. I'm probably seeing he's playing wide. I see this hand. I definitely want to play it. I just called, and I think that's probably the first mistake in the hand. I probably should have been aggressive. Out of position. If I win it, I win it. Oh well. Flop comes 10-6-5 with 2 hearts. We do have a heart. We've got the 8 of hearts. So we have a pair, and we have backdoor heart draw. We have backdoor straight draw, backdoor gut shot, I guess. Gut shot straight draw. If we had 3-bet here, I think we would probably bet again with the 8, knowing that an overcard to the 10 would allow us to bet again, or probably a heart would allow us to bet again to be aggressive. We didn't bet, so I think our play here is to check 100% of our range. We expect villain will bet, and then we're probably going to call. I don't know if our hand's going to be strong enough to raise here. So I think he's c-betting 100%. So he's got a huge range here. We figure to be ahead with our 8s. I think folding's out of the question, so the decision is between raising and calling. I think an argument for raising is if we think villain's going to call along with like a 5 or a 6. So let's say 5-4, 5-3, 5-2, maybe ace-5, king-5. I think he has all of those in his range. If he's going to call a check raise, I think we benefit from it. Same thing with the 6. Some of the weaker 6s, we were going to get value from that, get a bigger pot. With the idea that if we bet again, so we check raise and then we fire again on the turn, if we don't think he's going to call then, so if he would have called the check raise but not the bet on the turn when we make it, I think check raising is probably the way to go. If we check raise and he calls and will probably call us down, I still think that would be okay, but you're going to know that we're increasing our variance because with each bet we're going to be betting more and more and more. If we think he would probably just fold everything except, a 10 or some draw. So let's see here. He bets 100%, and then let's say he only calls with top pair plus an overpair, flush draw, and open-ended straight draw, and maybe the gut shot. If he only calls with that, so he's folding 73% of the time, then I think we can go ahead and we could still check raise, but it kind of depends on what is he going to do on the turn. So if all of those hands that he folded, if he's going to bet those again on the turn, then it's probably better to check call, wait for him to bet again on the turn, and if we're going to make our raise for value, do it at that time. Or again, kind of depends on what we think. Is he going to fire out 3 barrels just as a complete bluff? I think we just check call, check call, check call, check call. Let him blow it off, because if we raise, he's going to dump 67% of his hands on the flop, or another subset on the turn, and so forth. So we'd get like 1 bet versus the 3 bets that we get. So how do I think he's going to play? I suspect he's going to play more of I'm going to fire barrels. I'm going to apply pressure and try to get you to fold. So he's going to, I want to keep as much of his junk hands in his range and let him continue to bet. So I think when he bets, even with our big hands, I don't think we're gonna be folding. So I've got the middle pairs, I've got bottom pairs. I think pocket pairs below the board are going to be rough. I think we could call them. I think we can call them, and I'm going to include the 2-card backdoor flush draws because I think he's such wide range that I want to have some equity. So I think check calling 60% without having a check raising range is appropriate here for a player who I envision is going to be very loose and attack. 9 of hearts comes. Okay, so that seems scary, but it's not. I don't think it's scary. Yes, he could have had the flush, but if we go back, if we take this out and look at his flush draws, it's 5.85% of all of his hands. So yeah, even though the flush card looks scary, it's actually a very small percentage of the hands that he has. We do improve. We get closer to the flush, and we're closer to our straight. So we now have a gut shot along with our pair. So the plan now is, again, should we bet? Should we check? And if we were planning to check, are we planning a check call or a check raise? So I think here, if we bet, we give villain a reason to fold. And let's see, if I lead out, I still think he's going to go top pair, probably call. Maybe call the middle pair. And then I'm going to say he has the flush, probably with the flush draw, probably with the open ender. Is what he's going to call. So if we lead, we're going to probably get almost 50% full, 49%. We can lead a lot of the time. If he would bet 100% of his range again, and then if we check raise, he folds 49%, that could be a viable play now, because we would get that extra bet in on it, into the pot, and we could take it down those times he had, he folds, and yet we still have some equity. We might be ahead with our eights, or we may have to connect, and we can still connect with a heart. We can still connect with a 7. If we think villain's going to bet again as a bluff, so fire that 4th barrel, then I think it would be wise just to go ahead and check call and let him fire that 4th barrel, and it may happen regardless of what card comes. And we would let him do that. I think the catch would be another heart. I think if another heart comes, he's probably going to be less likely to bet that river into a 4 flush. I think with a 7 also, 7 or an 8, he might also be less likely to bet. But those, I think 7 and 8 is going to be a tough card for us, because if we bet, I don't think he's going to call unless he has whatever's being represented on the board. And I'm not sure if he would be betting again on that river. So there's certain cards that we don't want to see. So right now, I think I'm kind of ahead. A good card to see is probably like a 2 or a 3 of like diamonds or spades or something like that, if we expect villain to be bluffing again. So what do? I checked. I think checking's okay. It's going to be hard. We've already taken the stance that we're playing it a little bit passively. We kind of think villain's going to be betting again. So, I think we let him. So we're going to check, and then villain checks behind. Now that's rather interesting, because I thought he was going to bet again. And at that point, I'm going to eliminate a huge part of his range. So I think he probably has a flush draw, but I don't think it's the nut flush draw or second. I think it's going to be a weak flush draw if he has one. Maybe a gut shot. So I'm going to X a bunch of these out, because I think he would have continued with all those. So you can see he's got a bunch of hands. Yeah, it's some draws with that check. That just right there tells me he missed. So my read that he was willing to fire, 3 barrels probably isn't going to be accurate. 10 comes out. At this point, I am pretty confident that I am ahead. So he already checked. The question is, can I get some value with a bet? If I bet, do I think he's gonna call? No, probably not. I think the play is, the tactic is to go ahead and bet with our entire range, and that would include with our 8s. But should we do that? 8s is part of our weak pair. That could be showdown value hand, so we could check call, or check and hope it gets down. Once he checked, I think he's probably just going to check behind. So if we want some value, I think we should probably bet, and that was correct. And I do think we should get some value here. If I bet, what do I think he's going to call with? Maybe he calls with one of these weak pairs or the ace size. I think that's what we're hoping. That's what I would be hoping for. I don't think he has his beat. So I think our bet would be entirely for value, and that's what we should have done. He checked, and I think he's checking everything of these. So we see the hand, and he shows king 5. So he had one of those hands that I thought that a check raise would probably call, but he probably wouldn't call a turn bet if we fired again. So I think our flop play is okay. I think our turn play is okay. Once the turn went check, I think we should fire, and I think we're probably firing everything, even as a bluff, because we know even if he calls the bluff catch, we're going to get some value out of these weak pair hands, and that's what we want. We want to try to get some additional value. Now, how much should we bet? Pot's 15. I don't see any problem with betting, 10 to 15. We could always go a little bit smaller, maybe go 5 or 6 to encourage like getting called by ace high. If we knew the player a little bit better, maybe we would. All right, so I'm going to take some notes on this player. Note that he might not fire in that second barrel with bottom pair on a somewhat scary board. And then if you like this hand, look tomorrow for another.